Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I am Tom.
We are Team Binge. Thank you for joining us for Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 10. This episode was called International Break. And we watched it, and now we're going to talk about it, and you're going to listen to us if it's the last thing you do. That's not a threat, but you have until midnight, or this comes off the table. Tom, a lot happened in this episode, considering we seem to have been spinning our wheels in past episodes. Very surprisingly, in the beginning of this, they're like, guess what? Nate doesn't have a job anymore, and look who's in, first place. This episode took me by surprise in terms of, we almost did, a time jump, it felt like, a little bit, but I don't think there was a time jump. I am touching things too soon. They are hot to the touch, so I'll back off and just start how we always start, how we've started every 600 Team Binge podcast. Tom, how did you feel about International Break, episode 10?
I'm with you. I think the beginning was a bit jarring because it was a huge exposition dump with these soccer pundits talking about how well Richmond is doing, and the Nate bit took me by surprise. I kind of liked where they went with it, with that story, if I'm being honest. And
Sure.
I think there were some, again, Rebecca's story certainly got moved pretty far forward. I was terrible for Keely. That's the lowest point for her, and it was so sad to watch her go through all of that. But we got all of our main characters outside of Ted, since he really wasn't even in this episode, to move forward, and we're kind of seeing the end game for them. So I think overall I enjoyed it. I still don't like this show when it goes an hour long. I think it's more impactful and funnier as a shorter sitcom than these long, dragged on dramas. But the drama that we had, I think, was good, well earned for most of the characters, and I overall enjoyed it.
I agree. I enjoyed this episode as well, considering some of the other ones this season I was not in love with. But to your point, it was jarring. It was long. It was like an hour and 6 minutes. And anytime there's no limit and comedy, people will just, go on and on and on. So let's take the next 3 hours because there's no limits on podcasts. They can't stop us to talk about this hour-long episode. It's the rule of ×3 in podcasting that everyone knows.
Fact.
Tom, Richmond's won 10 games in a row, and they play 30 games in the season, right?
It's 36, 38, something like that, yeah.
So to have a 10-game win streak, and these aren't draws, Tom. These aren't ties. These aren't each team scoring the same amount of goals in net. These are, Richmond is on a 10-game win streak. Does this seem like they've turned it around? This seemed extreme for the show to be like, oh, by the way, remember that long stretch where they were doing terrible? Well, there's still more than 10 games left, and they've won them all.
Yeah, I mean, they put them in first place here, so it's their league to lose at this point. And then West Ham, they say, is in second place. So, and a lot of this exposition dump it's really threefold. It's to say, okay, Richmond is winning games. They're at the top of the table. Sam is playing really well for Sam's storyline that's coming up here, and then Nate is gone. Those are the big little bits here, and I'm with you. It does seem like that Nate being fired thing was a huge bombshell that took me by surprise.
Oh, I thought you were mostly jarred by the fact that Sam was playing inspired, because you're on record as saying that you don't care for the play of Sam Obisanya. I feel like you've said that. Yeah, no, we love Sam. The Nate thing was the jarring part, but to your point, because you have been down on Nate as of late, that rhymed. You are back in on the Nate Shelley story?
Well, I don't necessarily love all of Nate's stuff. Let's not
commit.
get overboard
You won't
here.
commit, yeah.
But I just like that Nate left on his own terms. When they said this, I'm like, oh great. So now we get Rupert sacking Nate because he didn't do this stupid guys' night thing that he had set up. If that was the catalyst. But we kind of quickly find out that it was Nate's decision. He decided to leave due to some sort of incident that happened at West Ham. So when I first heard this, I'm like, oh God, geez, why are we doing like this? But then when Nate took the ownership of it, I think I liked it a little bit more.
It feels like they are not spending any time with interleague play in terms of there's been maybe 2 or 3 big games. I'm wondering if the teams in the Premier League only gave them licensing for those 3, because it feels like we've gone to the international play well before. I know we haven't specifically, but we did that like exhibition game or whatever. Anyways, this felt like they were like, hey, we can do something outside of the league. We're going to do international play. That way the audience doesn't have to spend time in the Premier League. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I feel. It's like when a show is constantly doing bottle episodes, for then you'd be like, okay, are we not going to... Anyways, maybe that doesn't make sense, but...
No, I'm with you. I think the idea for this show is like they're touching on a lot of different aspects of like the modern English football player, and the fact that, yeah, they do tournaments inside of their regular season, inside of international play, inside of friendlies. Like, it is busy, it is crazy schedule, and I like that we got some of these characters here that we'll talk about in a second get promoted to their international teams, and seeing kind of how some of this stuff would play out.
Sure. And we're in the locker room. Ted very kindly to the audience is like, hey, just so you are all aware, he looks straight down the barrel of the camera, goes, no game next week, as if this team doesn't already know that. But once again, Jason Sudeikis looks into our soul and says, remember, audience, no game next week. Beard announces the players because these guys don't know, or yeah, I guess they don't know because Sam is sad in this moment. So this is like when you're going to make varsity, or allow me, whether or not you're going to be able to play Tevi in Fiddler on the Roof like you've always dreamed about playing, and they put the cast list on the cork bar, correct?
I don't understand that reference, so I won't respond to it. But none of this is true. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, Ted speaking directly to the camera, Beard announcing this. Like, this is just to kind of help the audience out, which I'm okay with. The fact that, like, all these players are now super excited that, you know, Jamie's going for England. Like, yeah, Jamie would have known that well in advance for travel, for prep, for, you know, loads of other things. But I'm okay with the show doing it this way.
Okay. So Tart's going to England, Van Damme's going to Canada, Rojas is going to Mexico, Cumberbatch, of course, is going to Switzerland, Cullen is going to Wales.
Cumberbatch.
What did I say?
You said Cumberbatch.
Okay, Cumberbatch. Yeah. Doctor Strange is going to Switzerland, Cullen to Wales. I can't help but notice none of these guys are good enough to play for the United States. Correct, Tom? That's what I'm supposed to read from them going to all these other countries other than the United States? The best soccer team in the world, I believe.
Oof, not so much. There is actually a cameo from a former U.S. national men's player. It's when Roy is kind of walking into the office with his tie-dye shirt, and he gets that kind of oddball look from one of the assistant coaches. That was actually a former, I can't remember his name. It's like Josh Conrad or something like that. So it's kind of funny to see him in there.
Oh, yeah. I noticed those guys were not seen in the show any other time, and we're supposed to act like we know them on staff. So it would make sense that that was a cameo. The big point here is that Sam is not playing for the Nigerian team, and this is a surprise to everyone in the locker room.
Yeah, because we got that exposition up at the beginning. Like, we already know Sam is a fantastic player, but the idea that he's on like a tear right now and still didn't get called up for international play is kind of unheard of. A lot of times for these international friendlies, the guys come up. It's usually the guys that are performing really well in their respective leagues.
Got it. We get a great joke here from Ted. I love when you mix deities and narcotics. He's like, Godspeed, or whatever narcotic your deity chooses to self-medicate with. It was a good line. It took me a second. Lovely moment here. I mean, I don't feel like we have talked enough about Jamie Tart and just what a thrill it is to see where his character has gone from season 1 and season 2 to this. The relationship between him and Sam in season 1 was like terrible, and now he's the one that comes over to Sam and is like, hey, are you all right? I know that's disappointing. You're killing it. You'll get him next time. I don't know. There are times where Jamie this season has really made me proud of the Lasso gang.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it. This arc for all the characters in the show is by far the best, and it's well written, and I think it's all earned. And even I think in season 1, or was it season 1 where whatever Jamie kind of comes back with season 2, Sam is the one that says, like, there's no other player that made me feel as bad as Jamie does. And like, here we are towards the end of this season, and Jamie's there for him, comforting him, and then, you know, the little bit at the end where he's wearing his jersey number. It's just great, and I love every moment of Jamie at this point.
It was wonderful. Speaking of wonderful, there's this dynamic that I like that they did this in the episode because it was worth the time they put into it. Rojas skews evil now that he knows that
so
I guess Team Mexico and Team Canada are going to play each other. So Van Damme walks over to talk to him and Rojas goes evil.
Oh, man. I think at this point, we officially meet Randy Dojas.
I love it.
It's the Ned Tasso, or was it Ted? Well, I can't do it right now. Led Tasso, excuse me.
Nope, you got there. I let you get there. I yes-anded you with silence until we figured out what you were doing, and you found it, buddy, and we're very proud of you. Your family is here with me. We're all very proud of you, Tom.
Thanks.
All right, we're at Biscuits with the boss, and we find out, I don't believe this for one bit. This was the most unbelievable fact in the entire episode. Ted is bad at girl talk? I don't think so.
I mean, we got snippets of it where I think he was trying to like logic it too much, or I guess try to answer it or solve problems as opposed to just kind of gossiping. But I love the way this is shot because it's just filmed as like they're the only two characters in the room, and then as like Ted says he doesn't love gossip, it pans right over to Trent, who's like, "Ooh, I've got some hot gossip for it," and Rebecca's all for it. It's great.
Right, love to see Trent being included in Biscuits with the Boss, the Diamond Dogs. Let him on the soccer team. You know, give him some boots and a kit and let him run out there. Did I use those terms correctly, Tom?
Yes, you nailed it. And I'd watched that.
Episode 600, we finally got there. I know all of the terms. Something you touched on there I think is important, and this is who we're sponsored by, Good Advice. The Lionel Coogan's and Good Advice section of the podcast. You made a comment about Ted trying to solve problems rather than just listening. A big thing in the world is sometimes people just want to vent. You just listen to them. Sometimes a certain gender has the issue of trying to solve problems where they should just listen. And so that was brought to you by Good Advice and Lionel Coogan's. I think. Who knows? They haven't sent us anything. I found a single Lionel Coogan's in a friend's refrigerator the other day, and he's like, "Oh, you should really try that." And once I opened it, he was like, "Yeah, I can't stand him, so I'm glad you opened it." And actually, I shouldn't tell that story because then oh, it was delicious, Lionel Coogan's. I loved it. It was so good. I drank half of it, and then I was like, the calories, and then I didn't drink the rest. All right, this moment is brought to you by Lionel Coogan's. Nate, they talk about, hey, what do you think happened to Nate over at West Ham? And Trent says something like, well, I heard he was involved in some scandal. I like what they do here. They're like, she's like, do you guys believe that? And he's like, no, there's no way. And then I think this is where our boy Higgins, coming from way in the back, you see him floating in like a frisbee golf that Tom's thrown all the way to the metal basket thing. Tom's really good at frisbee golf, everyone. I want you guys to know that.
Thank you for getting that in.
No worries. But speaking of things that come back to you just like a frisbee and a boomerang, Akufo is back. Am I saying it right? Akufo?
I think it's Akufu.
Okay, well.
But it is spelled UFO, so yeah.
Oh, are we about to talk about UFOs, Tom? I've got theories. Is that where this part of the episode is UFO talk with Tom and Julian? Tom, do you believe in UFOs? No, me neither. All right, next time on UFO Talk with Tom.
Well, didn't the very first episode or season of Ted Lasso, they ask if he believes in ghosts? So, I mean, it's in the same realm. But this episode's too long for us to digress about UFOs.
All right, that's fair. I think I covered the topic, to be honest, though. All right. The Super League is brought up where Akufo is trying to create a Super League. Tom, I feel like this was in the papers like a year ago. I'm sorry, I don't read the newspaper. I feel like this was in the news on the internet a little while ago about a Super League being formed, and there was a lot of backlash. Did they, once again, dust off a story from years ago, much like celebrity pictures getting hacked? What happened here?
Yeah, I think it is. And it was a bunch of leagues from around Europe trying to create, and I think it was literally called the Super League. And it was just a means for these, like everything that's said in this episode is exactly what it is. It's a means for these richer teams to get richer and never have them play like lower tier teams, because lower tier teams can't afford to buy the players that these teams have. So it's a real thing. It's unfortunate. Like Chelsea was one of the teams that originally signed up for it, but it was comical because this league was signed up for by like 10 teams or whatever, and within a matter of like a week, there was so much backlash, it disbanded like as quickly as it came together.
Sure. But aren't the poorer teams out there robbing the richer teams and then giving those riches to the poor, thus making everyone rich? I feel like that is a tale about soccer teams. Is that not what's happening?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's what's happening. That we'll call that an American tale. This is a European tale. The rich just keep getting richer, that monarchy and stuff.
Sure. And Robin Hood. The devil calls Rebecca. The devil is who, Tom?
The devil's Rupert, but Ted was confused for a second.
Yeah, they played, to your point from the beginning, they don't give Ted a ton in this episode in terms of like deep storyline. He's just brought in to be funny, which is his job, and I appreciate it. But I don't know if the devil actually uses phones. Although I've heard some things about 5G networks recently, Tom, that I'd like to tell you about.
That's 6G. 666G.
6G. Dang it! You were faster. You got there. Well, that just tells you who's closer to the devil between the two of us. Anyways, let's leave the devil. Yes. We did it when we
play the violin.
I love it. I was going to say that's why we started this podcast. We gave him our soul, and man, it has not paid off. We have been talking about Lionel Cougans for a long time. Anyways, we're at Nate's house. Nate is in bed, and he is sad.
Yeah, well, clearly disheveled. Did you see his hair?
Yes, I did. And it's not getting any darker. It seems to be getting a little bit grayer and a little bit more disheveled. He's comforted by Jane. I like to see that she did not leave him after his big corporate job with West Ham went away. And this is where we find out, this is the reveal, right? We find out that Nate quit his job.
Yeah, and so he ended up leaving on his terms, which I appreciated that bit of the story.
I don't know, and maybe they don't give us the straw that breaks Nate's back, right? We don't know why. The last scene we see of Nate is him at the Honey Pit Bowl refusing to go with Rupert, right? Is that not...
The Honey Pit Bowl? Man, I want to go there.
The Honey Pit Bowl. All it is Pitbull music on repeat. And I don't mean the dog. I mean the well-known rapper that we all know and love, Pitbull. Grammy winner, Pitbull, I'm sure. Platinum artist, Pitbull.
I thought it was actual Pitbull just covered in honey, and you had to, catch him.
Oh, that sounds terrible. And, wouldn't it make more sense for it to be something slippery? Like, if it was honey, you'd, stick to the dog, and then the dog would eat you because all of a sudden your hands would be sweet. You'd be like, oh, don't eat the sweet off my hands, and then the dog would eat your hands. A lot of handless people running around. Anyways.
Well, we get a little bit at the end with Rupert's new assistant that I guess we'll talk about a little bit, but I'm assuming, it's some sort of harassment maybe with that assistant, so... I don't know what happened. I don't know if I care to really know the details, but I'm assuming we're going to get it because it's just too weird of a thing not to give us some sort of understanding of that reason.
I'm sorry. So much like Ted, you're opposed to gossip. We're not going to gossip about what happened here. I just feel like it's weird from the show's perspective to pull this on us and then not give us... he never had a confrontation with... Rupert, and maybe they'll do it in flashback. Would they? I
think that's what they'll do. Yeah, if Nate eventually comes back to AFC Richmond or does whatever else, this will be a flashback showing us that he grew a backbone and told Rupert off, or stood up for Rupert's assistant, I guess, original assistant. I don't know.
Tom, what if you're giving Nate too much credit and it was just them disagreeing about, I don't know, Nate hit his fender of the new car off something and he went to Rupert and he's like, hey, do you mind getting it fixed? And that's where the falling out was. It was something silly like the paint job on his Bentley.
It's got to be the assistant. Like, it's too weird for him to just randomly get a new assistant kind of towards the end of the episode. And I thought they made mention when Trent said it, like there's some sort of like, well, I don't know, maybe they didn't, but maybe I'm reading into it. Wasn't there like harassment or something at the team?
That's what Trent said. My understanding was maybe that was Rupert spreading rumors. Rumor Rupert, they call him, about Nate. I'm going to go with the paint job on the Maserati. I feel like they really telegraphed that one quite a bit. Which, pretty sure if Nate sells that car, he's set for several years of living in that house of his. So
listen, he was a Premier League manager for half a season. He's probably fine.
They probably extended him. Like the Cardinals, they probably gave him a 3-year extension and then fired him. Cardinals, you are dumb. All right. Smart. Jade is off to Poland, and she makes a joke. And, Tom, I'm going to ask you this question, because I know you love questions about this subject. Did you get this joke? I will say there was someone in my house that did not get this joke, so I had to go into it, and I assume this is based off, like, old racist jokes about how many people it takes to screw in a light bulb. Mm-hmm. And the play is, I guess, that Nate knows that joke, and so he's like, oh, that's funny. And Jay's like, why would that be funny? Because she says something like, you can help me and my family screw in light bulbs. And
I feel like she's the one that knew it was a joke. Like, that was like her humor and was messing with Nate, saying, like, oh, why is that funny?
Oh, I think she is messing with Nate, because this otherwise doesn't make, unless her parents run a light bulb farm where it's harvest season, where you have to put in all the new light bulbs for
Not a
them
factory,
to grow.
A farm.
Yes, a light bulb farm, Tom. Light bulbs grow in the ground. Haven't you ever seen The Prestige, where they've got all the light bulbs in the ground? That was a light bulb farm that Iggy Pop, no, what's that guy's name?
David Bowie.
Stardust. Ziggy Stardust, that's what I was looking for, grows light bulbs and top hats, if I'm remembering the movie correctly.
That was good. Good tie in there.
And Christopher Nolan, Tom. Christopher Nolan.
Light bulbs were dead the whole time.
Light bulbs were dead the whole time. All right, I'll let you go. I've talked enough about it.
So, I mean, I know how much you love puns and jokes. So, how many soccer players does it take to change a light bulb?
11?
I've got no idea, but it would take a lot less if they just used their hands. The other punchline would be like only the goalie could do it, but I like that one better.
I don't like any of them, and we'll be holding open tryouts for the guest host of this podcast coming up next week, where Tom and someone else does the last 2 episodes, because I'm not showing up anymore. There's press outside his house. Would there be press outside? I guess if West Ham's manager was fired, there'd be press outside their house, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the idea that he's fired on unknown circumstances, so the press wants to question him and ask him why he left, because they the pundits kind of make it seem like it was mutual or that he was fired, but yeah, who knows how it's being spun.
I really wanted Jade to break a camera or karate chop someone as she left, but she did not.
Bummer.
We are at the former law offices, or soon-to-be former law offices of KJPR. The office is being cleared out. I don't feel like Keeley caught on to this as quick as she should have, but she knows what's going on once Dan shoots his shot as he is packing up his classic office I've been fired or let go cardboard box.
Mm-hmm. And as we have learned from the after party, you only get one shot twice, so he took it.
That's good. That's very good. Barbara is there. Barbara's like, oh, Jack said that she was going to tell you, but they pulled funding. And I thought to myself, Tom, not to get too businessy, as you and I often do on our other podcasts, Talkin' Biz with Tom and Jules. The KJPR... The overhead is like an office and 5 people. They seem to be working. They had clients. They were not profitable or could not stay open long enough. I did not... I know this is a plot thing, but come on. You know, we didn't have any money in the piggy bank. Sell that leopard jaguar statue. That seemed to be worth something.
You can't sell that. I mean, this was silly and very abrupt. They kind of like paralleled the stories with Nate kind of hitting a low and now Keely kind of hitting her low, and they're just trying to do them, I think, at the same time in this episode. But I mean, I don't know. We talked about, like, is Jake going to be like a Rupert type? And I would argue, yeah, she's kind of is. Like, she gets a text from her later saying, like, oh, I can't believe this happened. I tried to fight for you. It's like BS. Like, this seems very much vindictive of Jack pulling all these funds for her, not telling her, ghosting her about all this. I didn't like this.
I agree. I did not appreciate what she does here. I do understand that this had to happen from a storyline perspective because it wasn't going to go well after they broke up.
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
I am Jack's overworked liver. All right.
It's a Fight Club reference for you, everybody.
Get me Will Trent, ABC Tuesday.
I don't even know where he is.
Will Trent is back.
You thought you could hide forever? Time to come home.
The series that's being called one of the best network procedurals.
We're going to solve this case.
Featuring new cast member Gina Rodriguez.
I'm a prosecutor. We deal in truth and facts.
Maybe everybody should try that, huh?
Will Trent, the 2-part season premiere, begins Tuesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Airplane. We're on a plane and we see Danny and Van Damme. This was great. I love Mean Rojas. I love it so much. He seems to be having so much fun. I did not appreciate the crushed Doritos, just cleaning it up, as well as I love Doritos. And anyone that, I don't know, defaces Doritos, I'm bothered by. They're a national treasure.
Yeah, my wife's first inclination here is like those poor flight attendants. Like, they're not cleaning this up, so somebody else has got to clean it up. And Danny's he's hardcore when he's playing for Team Mexico.
His fighter pilot jacket with the fur collar and the skeleton patches, I was all about it. I immediately went online. I looked up what does a leather jacket cost. Realized I already own one that I never wear because, quite frankly, I cannot pull it off, which I should have thought about when I purchased it drunkenly 2 years ago. But that's neither here nor there. Oof, I don't know. It hangs in the closet. One day I'll be cool enough, Tom. We're in the coach's office, and Sam is sad. He walks by the door. He gets a little bit of a pep talk from Ted. Not his best pep talk, but he does say, be a goldfish, which I think is the first time we've heard that reference since, like, episode 2. But
yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie. And I think he gives him, like, that Michael Jordan reference. And that just made me think of that movie Air, which I just recently watched on Amazon. So just a shout out for that movie. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. I prefer Air Bud 3 of the Air trilogy. That's the one where he is a fisherman in Cape Cod, and he goes on the swordfish boat, and then they all die because there's a perfect storm.
It's like a Willy Wonka kind of situation here.
Yeah. There's no Air Bud 4. But I did appreciate Sam going into, because you always hear that, oh, well, Michael Jordan was cut from his, the varsity team. I love that Sam is like, well, actually, he does the old, well, actually, Oscar from The Office. Drink. We have some hatchet throwing. Beard is talking about it. Jane has, I don't like that there's a Jade and a Jane. Too many similar names in this show. And so we have some pictures that were made of Nate. Tom, talk about hatchet throwing and how much you love it. How many hatchets do you own, Tom? Right now in the room you're in, look around. How many hatchets are within arm's length? How many, if you swung a cat, would you hit?
I've got 4 within arm's length. I mean, I can't imagine being in a different country than my axes.
That's so good. So good.
But yeah, it was, I don't know, it's kind of a comical thing. I thought we were actually going to do like a bar scene where they are doing hatchet throwing at a certain point, just the way Ted responds. But yeah, he I guess Beard still has it out for Nate, and Ted is obviously kind of trying to draw him back a little bit and kind of says, bad karma to celebrate somebody else's bad karma, which I think is very fair. So I don't know if I really caught that Beard was as upset about Nate as he is here, but I guess it's because he was so hateful and vindictive to his friend being Ted. So
sure. Bad karma celebrating someone else's bad karma. Is this Schadenfreude, Tom? Is this, and I'm not saying that right, but is that not what that is? Laughing at someone else's, like...
misfortune? I think so.
Okay.
Way to Schadenfreude, bro.
If only this show knew how to do a callback.
There's a lot in this episode.
There is a lot. Intentionally or unintentionally, I don't know. Speaking of intentionally, Roy is intentionally out on hatchet throwing. And I was like, oh, where's Roy going to go? I love where Roy goes. I would spend all day with Phoebe and Roy and his fit sister. It was great.
Yes.
We're then with this awkward moment, not the movie, this awkward moment that you and I love. Miles Teller and Michael B. Jordan, our favorite of those two together. No. Zach Braff. No. Zach whatever. Who's the guy that dances in the high school stuff? Anyways, doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Awkward.
I don't know where you're going.
Awkward moment between Rebecca
Talk about an
and
awkward
Sam.
moment.
I don't feel any self-consciousness about this at all. We don't get paid, Tom. Rebecca and Sam have an awkward moment in a hallway. Oh, this reminded me of Michael Cera punching that young lady's area in...
Chest?
Yes, thank you. Chest. Well, they're not playing chess, but they're walking in the hallway. And anyways, that was a different movie. Can't remember the name of that movie either. I think my brain is broken this evening, Tom.
Super bad.
Yes, my mind is super bad right now. You are correct, although that is hurtful that you would call it that. I'm typically sharp as a tack. She apologizes for him not making the national team.
I mean, I don't know. Like, to your point, they bumped him in. That's awkward. I don't know if I needed this. I don't think the show was going to try to bring Sam and Rebecca back together here. It's just, I think they're continuing to play with the audience, and I don't know if I need it.
Oh, I think this is the more likely of the relationships for Rebecca. Am I in the minority here in terms of, I feel like Rebecca and Sam are the long game, and I felt like this scene was like, hey, remember these two are good together. Are you not? Who do you think Rebecca and Rupert are getting back together?
I don't know at all, in all honesty. Like, we know all of the psychic predictions or whatever are going to come true. So she's going to be with somebody that has a kid, or she's going to get with somebody and then be able to have a kid. But I guess we still haven't established first with any level of certainty whether that doctor's news was good or bad, right?
That's true. Tom, you are forgetting the third option, which is she's going to be with someone and they're going to kidnap a kid. You can find someone who has a kid, make a kid, or steal a kid. Those are the three
That's
options
how you become a mother
that the church recognizes for motherhood. Anyways, it was awkward, but I am actually in the long run voting for these two to wind up together. She gets a invite from Rupert to join the Akufu League meeting, and she asks Rupert, because Rupert is snuck into the stadium, I guess. This is kind of a running theme in this episode about his history of sneaking into the stadium, which I think we might need to fire some security people, or at least, I don't know, give them guns.
It's just a sewer guy.
Oh, just the sewer guy.
And they're in England. They don't have guns.
That's fair. And
he needs more hatchets.
Hatchets or swords. I agree. Anyways, so he invites her. She asks about Nathan. And this is once again where I kind of felt like there's some misdirect on what Rupert is putting out into the world about what happened with Nathan. Because he goes, some people are just not ready when they're given their shot. And so he's putting the onus on, he's like making it Nate's fault, which I guess it is if Nate just quit, but the why of the quitting. I actually, now that you have brought it to mind, I don't think I caught it on my two watches, but I think you're right. This probably does come down to the scratch on the car and Nate asking him to pay for it. You're right, Tom. I think
We'll see.
the other option I just came up with it on my own, is that maybe it has something to do with the assistant that is no longer with them and that they replaced.
Interesting.
I don't know
Interesting.
if you thought of that one, Tom, but just something. I'm going to give that one to you, okay? So you think about that.
Appreciate you.
Speaking of appreciating people, Tom, how much do you appreciate Uncle Day? Where does it rank on your federal holiday rankings?
I don't know. Is Uncle Day a thing here in the States? I feel like it should be. I've got a bunch of nieces.
Nope, Tom, the joke is that it's not a thing. That's why I was setting you up. But
I feel like it is a thing.
No.
They've got days for everything nowadays, man. There's Pretzel Day. There's Uncle Day, I'm sure.
man, but on Pretzel Day, I love Pretzel Day.
Drink. Did you know? So the sister we meet here, this is not the first time we've met Roy's sister.
I did not recognize her. I mean, to quote Jamie,
So
she's fit,
she is-
but I did not recognize her.
We've seen her because I think we've made mention of Roy back in like season 1. Why he's like with Phoebe so much is because his sister is a doctor, and we actually met this actress playing the doctor when Dr. Sharon was hurt in her accident when she was on her bike, and like Ted was at the hospital making sure she was okay. This was Roy's sister.
I think
Yeah.
you guessed that at the time because you were like, oh, that's Doctor, because she's a doctor, but her name tag says doctor. And so I think her name is Dr. Kent. Dr. Kent, forgive me. They put their first names on their uniforms in the UK. Little known fact, it's because medicine is free over there. So they're less formal because the doctors, you refer to them by their first name. So she's Doctor. I did not know that, Tom, but that is a good catch.
Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned, like now that we're back with Phoebe in this holiday, man, it's just so glad to have her back. She's like such a fantastic little like ray of sunshine, and I love this actress.
She is great. The sister's like, she loves this holiday. It's her favorite. And then she names some other weird holiday about chasing winter demons away, which I kind of wanted to know more about, but this was neither the time nor the place to fight demons. Jamie shows up. I love it. Once again, Roy and Jamie, if they don't get a spinoff where it's just the two of them living together in a flat in London, then this show is doing all of this a big disservice, I guess is the term most people use. But misservice is also something that you can use.
That's my wife's rap name.
I don't doubt it. Your wife is very talented musically as well as a hip-hop dancer. So Jamie shows up. Phoebe's like, listen, I wanted to invite your best friend. And they're like, we're not best friends. And I wanted to ask you about this. She goes, oh, well, Jamie, who is your best friend? And he goes, I don't know, Isaac. And Roy's response is, was he upset because he would claim Isaac as a best friend, or was he upset because he does not feel like Jamie is closer to Isaac than him and Was that jealousy when Roy said that, or was that him?
That's a good question. I never gave that any thought. I guess my just assumption was it's not Isaac. I feel like we don't see Jamie and Isaac exchange words very often, so it's kind of odd that he said him. But yeah, maybe he's just he's upset that he didn't pick him, even though he's begrudgingly saying he's not his best friend.
Right. I think it's jealousy and a little bit of that's how I think it's funnier that way. If Roy's like, we're not best friends, and then he names someone who's like, oh no, like we're better friends than you and that guy. Like,
yeah,
I think that's funny. Jamie, very sweet here. Jamie brought him a gift for Uncle's Day, which is a World Cup kit from 2014. So it's when Roy Kent played for England.
Yep.
Okay. And the best part of this, which had to be explained to some people, was Jamie goes, your name's on the back. I had them change the E to a U, which we are a podcast for children. So we will not explain that joke. But it is so much fun that they give the time and they watch Phoebe work it out.
Yes.
And that actress is fabulous. She is great.
And then they get the swear jar, gets a pound from Jamie, and Jamie's like, "Well, I didn't even say anything. I didn't say the word." He's like, "We made me think it," and it's basically the same thing, which was fantastic writing.
I love when Jamie's like, "Worth it." Whenever he's getting charged, worth it. I mean, Phoebe is making bank during this Uncle's Day.
She's set.
That's why she loves this holiday. She's like, I'm going to make back whatever I spend on Uncle Roy, I'm going to get back in the swear jar.
That's why she gave him this tie-dye shirt. He would just go on a tirade.
So you're saying this was intentional. You knew that he would respond this way.
Fact.
I love that the sister's like, she spent a lot of time on this and was very excited to give it to you, as we've all done with our kids when they're like giving someone something or doing something. We're like, they were very excited to see you open this gift, Grandma,
So
even
be
though
excited.
it's only macaroni. Yeah. This scene ends with Jamie taking the moment to say, your sister is fit. And Roy...
Cut your eyes out.
So good. So good. Sadly, we have to leave that kitchen table and go to a different kitchen table. We're at Ola's, and we find out that Akufu has bought out the restaurant through secretive means.
I feel like he didn't buy out the restaurant. Like, Sam didn't earn any money off of this. Like, Akufu just called to take all the reservations.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
But like this whole scene, it's terrible, and like this guy's just an awful guy that we found out at the end of last season. But man, do I love Sam Richardson, and his performance is just so over the top and fantastic. I loved it. I was laughing the entire scene.
He looked great when he does the wide eye, like crazy person look. He's great. We are big fans. He was in the After Party, which Tom and I did a podcast about. And we love Sam Richardson. I don't know that I have a read on this character. They're like, hey, we got to make him evil, but it's Sam Richardson. So the whole time you're like trying not to laugh, or I don't know, you're just enjoying his performance. So I still at the end of this don't hate Akufu because I love Sam Richardson. He's like, listen, I need to find the best chef. Here's a food critic I brought to your restaurant. We're opening a Nigerian restaurant 20 meters from here, which...
There must be like 7 miles, I guess.
Right. I don't know. I only speak in the imperial system. And I didn't understand the food critic's deal here. He seems to have bought into... I guess maybe he was bought by Akufu in order to be terrible to Sam.
To write a bad review, and then I don't know why he needs to lay on all the hatred on Sam, but I mean the big reveal we get here is the fact that Akufu paid $20 million to keep Sam off the national team. So such a brutal and hurtful reveal, but just shows the influence that Akufu has here.
Sure. Yeah, for all that protesting that Sam did on behalf of Nigeria, they're really, between Ceruleum Oil and Akufu, they're really taking some money in order to screw over Sam. That's for sure. This ending was perfect. I had forgotten, I guess, the bit that Akufu doesn't shake hands or do anything, so he has this security. I thought this guy was security, but then I realized from the other scene where he goes around and gives everyone high fives, Francis, that is, this high five with Sam. Sam plays this so well. The actor, just the look on his face, the like incredulous, like, what are you doing? Do I really have to put up with this? And him being like, Francis, really? This was like
on
so
the last
funny to
one,
me.
and then Francis wiggles his fingers like, hey, no, you got to do it. And then he does the hand to the
Too
hair.
slow.
Like, so good.
Up high, down low, too slow. It was great. We're with Nate. He's at his parents' house now. Is this where he sneaks in? Is this,
Yeah, he breaks into his parents' house.
Breaks into his parents' house. He's about to get his dome rattled by a cricket bat, and they discover it's him. He's doing those wall push-ups where you do a handstand against a wall. He's knocked over several potted plants. He's like, you moved the key. And I guess he just wants to sleep in his own bed? Is that what this is?
Yeah, I don't know if I get this. Like, he didn't want to be alone, I guess, is my thought, or he wants to get back to his roots somehow. I don't know if he's got like an agenda, because there wasn't any paparazzi or anything still at his house. So, I mean, it seemed like he was fine just sitting in his bed, but yeah, I mean, it's just for the episode and what they're kind of doing with Nate's story and getting him back with his family.
Yeah, I guess he's just looking for some sort of comfort, and he finds that in his mom delivering food to his room and him sleeping in his own bed, which, how long do you think Nate has not been living at home? It's got to be like 10 years, right? He's in his 30s?
I don't know. I don't know if we got that in the earlier seasons, if he was still living at home with his parents. It wouldn't surprise me if he was still like a kit man and living with the parents. I don't know.
I'm surprised his dad did not turn that room into a cartography room where all of the blue is land. Buster, you've had $30,000 worth of cartography lessons. Get us a channel to the ocean. Anyways, we're back at the former law firm of KJPR. Keely has this scene where she's about to get on the elevator, but then she just waits and let the elevator close. This is just to let us know she's sad. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, the funny little bit is like you look on the wall and somebody just crudely put masking tape over KJPR, which I thought was kind of funny and hurtful. But this just starts her on her own little journey.
Sure.
But I think it's we talked about it earlier. It's paralleled with Nate, so they kind of did Nate going back to his family. That's how he's kind of dealing with this. And now Keely's like, she's going on a little walkabout. She just needs time to herself.
Sure. We go to Higgins' office where Rebecca, we find out when she has no one else to talk to. Leslie is her last resort, and she makes him spill hot tea all over his lap.
Ugh, you got to give it up to Jeremy Swift here, right? The actor, like fantastic physical acting, and even throughout this whole scene with his Willy Wonka stuff, he is so good. I love Jeremy.
He does a great job. This whole scene reminded me of a painful memory where my dad took me camping. And he actually showed up, took me camping. It was, I think, the third schedule. I was sitting outside on the front porch with my fishing pole and sleeping bag. He said, son, I've got to help this lady find her dog. And then he disappeared for weeks. But this time he actually took me, and I was reaching across to grab a hot cup of steaming water in order to make hot chocolate. And in my enthusiasm to pull it out of that person's hand, I was reaching across my father, and I dumped the boiling hot water all over his lap. And that is why I don't have any younger siblings, other than my younger brother, who was already born. Sorry, Pops.
Monster.
Yes, sorry. What's funny is we were up in like a cold environment, so it goes from boiling to then all of a sudden you're very cold because your lap is freezing. And everyone knows that heat is taken from the groin area in terms of
Fact.
A lot of people think it's the top of the head, but nope, you got to keep that groin area warm. Julian, this is a podcast for children. I know. Okay, here we go. She needs some advice. And this is where we get you referenced it earlier, the Willy Wonka and all those dead kids. I think I've seen Willy Wonka once, maybe twice. Do the kids die, Tom? I know that stuff happens to them. Do they show up in the end?
They used to get wheeled away by the Oompa Loompas, so you have no idea what eventually happens to them. So that's why Leslie is making the, I think, astute observation that, these kids are goners.
Those kids are dead. I loved the runner, though, where he's like, listen, if you go to the meeting and they start dropping dead under mysterious circumstances one by one, you get out of there. And she's like, okay. At some point, I don't remember if it's during this or another meeting, they say Akufu has like the personality of a child throwing a temper tantrum. I did appreciate that they reminded us that he can fly off the handle, because the other episode we saw him in, he was like super nice and calm. And then at the very end, they let Sam Richardson, I don't know, take some sort of drug and lose his mind. And so it was good to have that reminder.
I think he took some Godspeed.
Took some Godspeed. I love it, Tom. I love it so much. I love drugs and God jokes. She should not go to this meeting, right? I didn't understand this. Everyone is against Super League. She gets invited to this. I felt like his advice should have been just like, don't go. Like, what good can come out of this?
Well, I think we saw what good came out of it. She was the only voice of reason in that room. All was just old rich white guys that want to just get richer, and she kind of put them in her place and told them how dumb of an idea this was, and kind of got them to actually think about, they did love that game at one point. They weren't at it all for the money. So I think Higgins is right here. Like, it doesn't matter how you got this invite, go take it and
just see what it's all about. Right. Tom, I do want to correct you. It wasn't all rich white guys, just so you know. There was some diversity in that room. You had
the two minorities.
And you had... That's true. That was a great joke. And she's like 4 feet taller than him, which is awesome. Yeah. I love Hannah Waddingham. I think, honestly, out of this whole show, I think she's the biggest winner. Just in terms of... Like, there is now a fan club for Hannah Waddingham, and I feel like her career will continue to skyrocket. Whereas, obviously, there's some other stars that will come out of this and do other things, but she has been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, she's just absolutely lovely. And I feel like I've seen just loads of her on the internet. And I think she recently just hosted or co-hosted the Eurovision, like the big song competition thing.
Tom, you don't have to tell me Eurovision. I've been watching it for 40 years. One day I'd like to attend in person.
But she's the best. Agreed.
She is. Speaking of attending in person, we have Keely at the pub. She's drinking. She's wearing leopard print, as one does. And she gets that text from Jack where Jack's like, listen, babe, I tried. Nothing I could do. Time difference, Argentina. My phone locked me out. It was updating. Won't take the blame. We don't like Jack. We're on record. We don't like Jack. We don't like Jake. We don't like State Farm. They're not a sponsor. But they could be, and then we'd like them again. Anyways, May, who... I'm amazed May and Keely have not crossed paths, but I thought this was interesting. May's like, listen, I've been my own boss for 40 years. There's been some ups and downs. I watched this scene a second time. I'm going to say this. The first time I watched it, no issues. I was like, all of this makes sense. The second time I watched it, I was like, wait, what is being communicated here about lightning on the mountaintop? And... I feel like there's some stuff that's thrown out here that when you dive into a little bit harder, you're like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, this line about, getting to the top of the mountain and what can happen to you is lightning, and then what is the follow-up response, like whether you're ready for it or not. I think that's the bigger line, is like, when big things like this happen to you in your life, like how you deal with it is just whether you are like emotionally like ready to take on the challenge or whatever it might be. And like the one thing that we haven't gotten so far in Rebecca's like prophecy, if you will, is the idea of like thunder and lightning. And I think you could argue, and this is obviously not directed at Rebecca, but you can argue like Rebecca is kind of at the top of this mountaintop or whatever, and the way she's dealing with Rupert and is able to, put him in his place here and truly get past and over kind of her hatred for him and just let him go. You could argue maybe that is the lightning part of the prophecy for Rebecca, but I mean, outside of a conversation I think Keely has with her at the end, this doesn't apply directly to here. So I'm drawing some strings here, but I don't know. It was a weird analogy.
Man, Tom, you're like pulling some Bible code stretches right now. I did not see those connections at all. I'm not going to say, it's not in the Bible code, but man, you gotta dig pretty deep. So
we'll become a gumshoe.
Not until the after party season 2, Tom. You're not allowed to bring those powers out. Okay, it's not your time.
Okay,
let's keep going. We're at the Shelley's house, and I just wrote Nate's mom's taking care of him. Cool. A lot of trays are being. I can't believe he is going to the bathroom in that bowl, and she has to go dump it out. It feels like they should have indoor plumbing, but it is what it is.
He should go to his urologist. That did not look healthy.
You mean his fecologist? The one that Rupert went to? That we're about to talk about? But before we get there, we're at Richmond. This is a lovely shot scene. We have Roy entering the building. People are staring at him, and you're like, oh, awesome. He's wearing it. The slow reveal of the tie-dye shirt, which is lovely.
And the music is so good. It's that Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Very like iconic song. And I think at one point we get Laughing Liam as he's walking by.
Callback,
yeah. His chuckle, which is good. There's a callback. But very, very funny scene.
Yep. Beard sees him. Beard trying to get Ted's attention is wonderful. Finally has to throw something at him. And then he departs. Roy departs. Trent sees him in the hallway. And the three of them just like meet, silently convene, shrug, and move on with their day. It's just lovely. And I think there's a moment here where, to your point, there is some cuts between what's happening with Nate, what's happening with Keeley. They're both like at the bottom and how they're dealing with it, which is what the show... I don't know that we learn anything from the differences in how they're, coping, but they are making the correlation there. We are at Richmond in the locker room. I like that the team gathers to watch the other teams play in these tournaments. It's a lot of fun. So we have Mexico and Canada playing each other. Rojas gets a fast break and kicks the ball into Van Damme's nose, and it is a wonderful.
The announcers are fantastic here. They carry this with like the classic Canadian charm of like, oh, that almost seemed deliberate. For gosh sakes. Oh, yeah. I apologize for that salty language.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man, I was laughing. Oh, the polite Canadian. That
Do
was
you
funny.
know, so I caught this not 15 minutes before we came on to pod. These two voices is Colin Montgomery and Ryan Stiles, the famous Whose Line Is It Anyway? Yeah, improv
guys. Oh, that's
so
great.
Good. Great cameos.
I love it. I wish I'd known. I love it more that you've told me. Rebecca's in her office. She is, I guess, reading a text message from Rupert, and she pulls out the matchbook and the toy soldier, and the toy soldier's inside the matchbook, so there's some sort of correlation between the two.
Yeah, what's your sense on this? Like, the idea that she's kept this kind of army guy from Ted this whole time is, I think, interesting. I mean, is this pushing the Ted Becca thing? Is it just kind of the idea of, like, the matchbook being her future and the toy soldier kind of thing being her past and being able to let go? I don't know exactly what to make of it, but they clearly are trying to tell us something here.
Yeah, I think the show is just trying to throw us down that path, but I don't think that's where they should go, and I don't... Once again, I am not a Ted Becca stan. I don't think those two work together. I don't think, from what we know of the two of them, that romantically... They're great as friends. They can be best friends. I just don't feel like romantically it makes sense. So
I think agree.
I think it's the show just trying to... I don't know. There's people on the internet that want that, and they're pandering to them, maybe. But who knows if that was a thing when they wrote it? I don't know when TV shows are written and when they're performed. And I assume they're live on my television, performing it in the moment. So
every single time I hit play, when I rewatch it, they do it again.
And every time I turn off my television, they're like, break, cut. He went to the bathroom. He'll be back in 25 minutes. Well... Probably 25 minutes. Depends on whether or not he finds something interesting on his phone. We'll call it a solid 30. Anyways. Oh, he's back. Never mind. Anyways, those are the conversations that they have. Places and action. Roy goes out into the parking lot, strips down, takes the shirt off, keeps his pants on. Sorry, audience.
And he was still wearing a shirt underneath the other shirt. He
was wearing I think a wool vest. And... I was like, there's no way. Roy would never leave Phoebe's shirt in the parking lot. And sure enough, he backs that, I don't know, Range Rover, weird Jeep thing. I don't know what it is. Backs it up, picks it up. And I was like, yeah, that's the Roy we know and love. Thank you. Speaking of Roy knowing and loving, this is not a good transition, Tom. So we'll keep it in now.
Waiting.
We have Rebecca seeing herself as a little girl in the mirror, and she gets big like a bear or a lion. I don't remember what she said. I know she talks about this previously, but I don't remember what the animal was.
Looking in the mirror to kind of psych her up. And like she's almost like holding her chest like she's having like a panic attack thing, which is kind of mirrored what we've seen in Ted this season. But this is a fantastic callback to the second season. I think it's episode 5, Rainbow, where I can't remember what the circumstance was, but she was talking to Nate and kind of bringing up the idea of like when she goes into a room surrounded by men, they all see her as a little girl in pigtails. So, like, again, I love the writing and that they're bringing this exact thing back. But I think the reason we're getting that here is because of what we'll get later on in that kind of boardroom scene of her kind of talking to these old men who are really just children in the way they're acting. But I like the way this scene was shot, and I thought it was pretty cool.
No, it's great. It's a great callback. She looks wonderful. She looks terrifying, which can also be wonderful. But we move on from there to Phoebe's school, and this is the only scene I wanted to talk about for this whole episode. Everything else has been garbage up until this point, Tom. Roy is wearing the tie-dye shirt. He drops Phoebe off. She says, "You look very nice, Uncle Roy." He's like, "Okay," which is great. And guess who shows up? Miss Bowen, our Irish charm.
I was so happy to see her on screen. I was happy more so for you to see her on screen, but it was so good. I'm so glad they brought her back, even for this small scene. But I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll see more of her.
Sure. Listen, seeing her on screen inspired me to watch that movie where the guy thinks he's a bumblebee, and then the other movie where the two Irish guys decide not to be friends anymore. I mean, just give me all the Ireland in the world, and certainly Miss Bowen being back. Very excited.
Now we do learn her first name. It's Leanne. So now I guess they're on a first name basis. But I mean, I feel like we should still call her Miss Bowen, right? We're not friends with her.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, I could be friends with her. It's not. Never mind. Go fish. Uno. Miss Bowen is wonderful. I like her. She's like, "I don't mind cleaning up a mess." Wink, wink. Mm-hmm. I did not like how they did this. They were like, "Hey, fan favorite Miss Bowen, here she is. Oh, we're going to have Roy get this stupid look on his face and realize something and leave abruptly." I was like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What did he realize? What happened here? I don't know. It felt like show chicanery to give and then take.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially from us who have been rooting for the Miss Bowen connection. But I guess the idea is that the mess he caused too much damage, and he didn't realize that he caused Keeley so much pain. Like, he was so focused maybe on himself and why he left, and not realizing how much pain maybe he put Keeley through. But I agree with you. It's a bit of a stretch, and like, we even get that line from Miss Bowen where she thinks like she blew her shot here, just like David took his shot with Keeley early on. Like, Miss Bowen kind of takes her shot here. I don't know. It's maybe my heart speaking here, but I feel like Miss Bowen might still be back in some form or fashion. I think she's still on the board.
Roy never should have left.
Yeah,
he should have stayed there. They should have, I don't know, gotten married at the school. I'm assuming principals can marry people. I don't know. I've never been one for schools attending or going to weddings there. But yeah, I did a very funny. This actress does a great job where she's, we can't repeat what she says, but she kind of mutters. She repeats what she says to Roy, realizes it was a dumb thing to say, which I don't feel like it was. It was great. Listen, it's tough to say dumb things in that accent. You know, every moment of it was wonderful. Anyways, unfortunately, we have to depart that scene, Tom. We can't spend the next 20 minutes talking about it, mainly because someone is glaring at me. So let's move on from Miss Bowen to formerly the law offices of KJPR. Keeley, which we saw a scene of her stopping at like a shop, and I had no idea what she was going to buy. I assumed it was a baked good, but it turned out she is giving Barbara a snow globe, which is a callback to Barbara buys a snow globe for every job after she leaves it.
Yeah, and I thought this was kind of nice, but then, of course, Barbara's got to ruin it and say, "Oh, I have to buy it for myself," so then buys it from her. But it was a funny, it was a touching scene.
60 quid, Tom. That snow globe was 60 quid. Barbara's like, "I think you paid too much," which was wonderful, and I need a receipt. Keeley looks around. I assumed she was going to take the neon sign and the leopard. Was that... I feel
like the leopard is hers. That is definitely hers, and she's probably taking that. The neon sign, I think she just turns it off.
Okay. I assumed, much like Michael Scott, she was going to take that neon sign and maybe put it up in the living room next to the plasma TV.
Ooh, nice.
if there's enough room. It was a big plasma TV. Rebecca is in the meeting, and she's arriving at the meeting. Rupert has a new assistant. Seems great. Certainly seems to have all the qualifications, and things seem to be going smoothly for this new assistant.
Yeah, she comes in here, brings his fecalist results. Kind of funny. They again poking and prodding at Rupert and saying how old he is. But yeah, this is again like what happened to this Star Wars villain lady of a assistant that he had previous. I'm assuming this is part of Nate's departure, and maybe we'll get a little bit more. I don't think I need it, but I felt like there's just too much of a mystery that the story's gonna, or the show's gonna give us a little bit of backstory here.
Fair. I want to go on record, despite what Tom said, fecalists are not just for old people. You can go to a fecalist when you're young, and they'll tell you what you had for lunch and dinner. It's a fun little game you can play. Also very costly because of healthcare. A lot of old white dudes, as you mentioned, Tom. The oldest of the white dudes very graciously compliments Rebecca. I thought this was a nice moment. He's super nice to her, says a lot of nice things, just normal compliments that you are able to give a woman in public, right? That's what happened?
Yeah, these guys are all trash.
Okay. Yeah, he makes some creepy comments. I did like Rebecca's joke in the beginning where she's like, I'm excited to talk to a bunch of old men as they talk to my chest, which was fun. Akufu shows up, and he is providing them a smorgasbord. I think that's a Ghanan term of, when you mix Ghanan food and hot dogs, Chicago hot dogs, that's a smorgasbord. That's what that means.
Yeah. But I like Akufu's line about the hot dogs as enjoyed by Pippin, Obama, and Ferris Bueller.
All great Chicagoans. A lot of Chicago Bulls work happening in this episode, and maybe it's just because we all watched Air Bud 3 recently. The demise of Air Bud. The tragedy of Air Bud, number 3. We're at the Shelley house. Nate finally leaves his room, goes to the attic. I had my wife and I had this comment, very much Christmas Vacation vibes, where he goes up to the attic. Yeah, there's something about the music, something about all of this just very much hit those vibes. Gets an old
dusty present and blows it off. It's like Christmas 1985.
Right. A present he hid from his mom. And then he gets the old projector out. I originally wrote that Nate pulls out his old guitar, and then was revealed several scenes later it was a tiny guitar that you play on your shoulder. But we don't get to that yet. We are at the Akufu meeting. Great moment. They make the Russian guy leave. Don't want to make it awkward for everyone.
This might be like a dig at the former Chelsea former Chelsea owner was Roman Abramovich, who was a Russian oligarch that was forced to sell the team when Russia invaded Ukraine and everything. So I thought this was kind of funny that they're kind of playing this little bit that the Russian guy can't stay in the room.
Right. And he also can't open a door the right way. He's just pushing, and Akufu's like, pull.
It's like a Far Side comic, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Far Side. They want to talk about this global super league and how it's going to make them all very rich.
I like Akufu's like lost in translation bit here, where he's like, each game an undried dream. It makes Rebecca take a second look.
Yes. We won't explain that joke, but it is. I caught it on the second watch with subtitles. I was like, that joke's too funny to be caught on the first watch. The future of football is very much like the automobile. He's like, we used to ride around horses and we hated the automobile. Now horses are hot dogs. All of that was a strange correlation. But I agree with him. Football needs to change and profits need to grow, right, Tom? And even though this is the moment where Keeley texts the encouragement to Rebecca, I felt like Akufu had some strong points here, and I'd like to invest.
I don't think they're accepting investors unless, you're part of the 3 Comma Club.
Well, Tom, based on how this podcast is going, I think both of you and I will be owning a team very soon. This is intercut with Nate beginning to play the violin, and I took this as Beard, the actor, Brendan, I'm going to say Fraser. Don't remember his real name.
Hunt.
Tom, this is I can't make that joke. All right. Anyways, Brendan Hunt knew how to hula hoop, and they made like an episode where he got to display his talent at hula hooping. I felt like Nick Muhammad knows how to play the violin, which I believe he does in real life. And they were like, hey, when can we have him bust out his violin playing? And this is that moment. And they intercut this with the meeting and Rebecca and her speech and everything. And listen, violins are great. I just felt like, okay, let's bring out all the actors' super talents, much like hula hooping. I'm going to argue that violin playing is much cooler than hula hooping. I'll go to my grave with that opinion.
Yeah, you're not alone there. I mean, a good violinist playing is, I think, one of the most beautiful instruments. And it was very beautiful over the speech that Rebecca gives, which is not just about, like, kind of owning these old guys or telling about the love of the soccer, but it's just, it plays to all sports, and it was awesome. I think one of the better kind of speeches we've had throughout the whole season. But yeah, so Nick Muhammad does play the violin, and that is him playing. And actually the piano that kind of comes in later on during this scene and during the music is played by his wife. So we got to do this little duet, and that was what was recorded for the episode.
Oh, cool. Yeah, if you look closely, you can see her in the background in the room playing a grand piano. So fire this episode back up, fast forward to that scene, and really look hard. You'll see it. To your point, great speech by Rebecca, talking about why sports are important and, you know, what this sport means to people. And very lovely moment once again. Intercut with the violin playing, but also this is then where we see Jamie going in for England at the end of the game. They're like, hey, seniors, Rudy, go in. And more importantly, he is wearing Sam's number, which is just a lovely moment. Rebecca talks about how this game turns ordinary men into heroes and villains. And then she tells the story about she once knew a boy who used to sneak into games, and he did it because he loved the game so much. And we can see, you know, she's talking about Rupert, which, you know, say what you will about Rupert in terms of him being a bad guy. The actor's fantastic. Like, he plays that role so well. And
well, in this episode,
so well.
Yeah, this episode, they gave him a little bit more, I don't know, more to play with, where he wasn't just a constant jerk the entire time and everything that he was in. Like, they gave him some redeeming values. Still hate the guy. I don't want to say hate. I still don't like the guy. But they did it. They did a little bit more here to kind of give him some sort of sympathy.
I've never hated Rupert. I've always thought Rupert was the hero of the show.
Misunderstood.
Misunderstood. That's correct, Tom. She makes the comment that just because we own these teams doesn't mean they belong to us, which we see some parallels. We've seen parallels in past episodes, I believe.
Yeah, I think Ted almost made the exact same line, but just as a coach, in terms of like this belongs to the fans, like, which is why he invited them to come to their practice and stuff. So I like that we got kind of a similar line from each of them.
Right, and she finishes. The show does a thing that show does, where Akufu's like, "Great speech. Who wants to make money?" And then a hard cut to him leaving the room, and you don't know whether or not they went with Rebecca or Akufu, and then it's revealed that they are all covered in food.
And I like the way that it's not Akufu, because he does not get his hands dirty. It was Francis that flinged all the food or put it in everybody's face, because he's like wiping his hands off as he's coming back into the room following Akufu.
I did not catch that. That's great. I love it. And then you have this nice moment where Rebecca and Rupert are laughing together. And honestly, I just want these kids to make it. I think they're going to go the distance, Rebecca and Rupert. We go to the Shelley house. And, okay, of all the unearned moments in the show, I take umbrage, not Professor Umbridge, but umbrage with this scene, because they have Nate's dad show up. He surprises Nate while he's playing, and Nate's dad is like, "Oh, I miss hearing you play." And Nate goes really hard at his dad about like, no, I thought you hated when I played. You said it. And the dad is like, it was difficult parenting you because you were a genius. I didn't know how to parent a genius. And the dad apologizes. I do not feel like we have gotten enough of these two, like that warranted the emotional weight of this scene, if that makes sense. Like we have certainly gotten Nate wanting his father's approval, but did we know? I mean, they call him the Wonder Kid, like soccer-wise, but part of me thought that was kind of tongue-in-cheek. Like, he certainly knows soccer, but did you think of Nate as a genius until this moment where his dad was like, "Oh, it's tough to parent a genius"? I felt like this was a little bit unearned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think this just, I've said it before, but it's the hard turn that they gave Nate, I think, does all of these redeeming storylines are trying to do now a disservice. Like if they would have brought it back a little bit or had more like family moments and scenes, this could have paid off a lot more. Because I love the idea of what they're doing here and getting them together and talking about like the expectations versus the knowledge. And again, like you've said plenty of times, if they would have communicated maybe back then, this would have been easier and not have this conversation when Nate is 40. Maybe their relationship would be better. But yeah, I'm with you. This is not an earned scene.
Tom, I just want to correct you. Nate's official age, he's 19 in this show. So, okay. He's still a young man. Yeah, I know what the show is trying to do. I will go with it because I love this show, but I don't feel like, of all the storylines, and I think I've been more upbeat on Nate than you have been this season. I just didn't know. I don't know. This is almost like show writing being like, listen, everyone loves like son and father, like dynamics, and them like the dad finally saying that he loves the son, like that'll hit them. And if we play some violin with it, man, people will weep. I was just like, I don't know.
A lot of people on the internet did.
Stuff. Did they?
I saw a lot of things from the internet and people talking about like tears and crying about the Nate sequences, and not just the Nate sequences. I think it's when the violin was playing, because that is just such a emotional ballad or whatever. So yeah, that's just another reason why I don't think we should have the internet.
If you also don't want the internet, please reach out to me at teambingepodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter. Soon we'll get rid of the internet and you will just be able to communicate with us through Gmail and Twitter.
I got sour news for you, Jack. Those are on the internet.
Joke's on you. I love sour candy. All right. And I'm not, listen, I like Sour Patch Kids, but I suck off the sugar. Nope, that's not the right phrasing. I suck off the sour and then I spit out the sweet, Tom. That's how much I love sour news. I hope that gets past the network censors. All right. Speaking of kissing, that was not a good transition either. We have Rupert and Rebecca. Once again, I hope these kids make it. He goes in for a kiss. She stops him. This was satisfying. I did have this fear that they were like, oh, are they trying to get these two back together? But Rebecca gives him a good forearm, like offensive lineman forearm, and says, no, not to my quarterback. And I relate everything to American football, Tom.
Well, this is, I think, Rebecca being the close second to Jamie in terms of character arcs and just becoming a better person, and, tied up in Rupert and everything had to be about him or getting back at him, and her kind of using this specific moment to just say, like, listen, no. Like, we're not doing this again. I loved you at a time, but we are far beyond that, and this is not what she wants or needs in her life.
Sure. It was very satisfying. I'm glad she did it. Speaking of satisfying, let's go to Keely's house. Keely's got a super nice house. I mean, it's got that U-shaped driveway. Just like there's some vines growing up. I don't know. Really like this house. Would love to live there someday. Keely, if that's an option. And Roy is there trying to slide a note under a door. Listen, if you tried to slide a note under the door of my house, you would hit the barrier that keeps scorpions away, which is a real thing. But he's trying to drop off a note. Keely catches him, and
I love the line where he says, like, what are you doing here? She's like, I live here.
I live here. He hands her the note. I could not do this. If I wrote something to someone and I have trouble giving someone a birthday card and them reading it, even if it's silently. The worst is when someone gets a card and they start reading it out loud. You're like, nope, that's not what that's for. She tries to read it and she's like, I can't read your handwriting. When they flash the card, I don't know if you noticed this, but he wrote like super small in one section and everything else is just open card. Did you notice that at all when she flashed the card?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think we even saw him, I think it's when they were watching the England game, the team is in the locker room, like he bought stationery and he's kind of writing this in the background and you see him write Keely and it is just awful handwriting. So it makes sense that Keely can't interpret this.
Yes. I hate to make fun of someone's abilities, but Roy apparently cannot write. She reads his note, or Roy reads his note to her, and he takes the blame for pulling away and apologizes for hurting her and ends it with, I love you.
Ooh, I really did that out loud when I watched.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
oh, that's a normal thing.
He said the love word.
Grown adults do. She says thank you, like Han Solo. And, oh, wait, no, she should have said I know, I guess would have been better. And Roy is like, okay. And you can see he's like, not amused, but understands she's not going to return it. And then he starts to walk off, and they do this funny cut where she goes to enter the house and then steps in his direction. So you're like, okay, those two are probably going to go play cards. Speaking of cards, we have a quick cut to Nate's family playing cards, and everyone's losing to the mom. And that is how Nate gets into debt by gambling on cards with his parents. Rebecca shows up at Keely's house, and they start to talk about why no one answers their phone.
This bit where Keely goes to answer the door and Rebecca hasn't like gone home to change or anything, and she's just covered still in like all the food, and then Keely screaming, "Oh, have you been shot?" That was so good. I loved it.
That was very good. That was very good. They sit down on the couch, even though they're covered in tomato juice, and Rebecca, which I don't know, maybe it was too awkward to do this last season, is like, oh, how much were they funding you? And we have a moment where Rebecca's like, oh, I think I have that cash on hand. I was like, oh, cool, humble brag, rich person.
I just don't understand this. Like, couldn't they have done this from the start? Was this a throwaway line at the end of season 2 when she was getting KJPR that she didn't want to take the money from Rebecca and wanted her own thing? Like, the fact that we're here now and she still has her firm and it's funded by her best friend, I feel like we could have been here earlier.
I agree. We could have been here earlier. Could have been here years ago. But we weren't. We're here now. And who shows up? Who's here now but Roy in the background?
Here. He's there. He's every effing where.
And he's in what looks like the most comfortable robe I've ever seen.
He does. Now, okay, so from your perspective, is this them officially back together? Like, this is the end game for the show. These two characters are getting back together? Or are you, again, this is probably my heart talking, do you think this might be like a one-night fling and she still might potentially go back to Jamie and realize that she needs to be alone or something? I just still feel like Miss Bowen might still be in the picture here.
Oh, that's what... Okay, so your heart is rooting for Roy and Miss Bowen, but is your heart also rooting for Keely and Jamie, or is it really the Roy and Miss Bowen thing that's driving that?
I feel like the fact that he brought Miss Bowen back, it got me excited for that relationship again, because I think that could be nice and fitting, and because of Jamie's arc and having him change as a person when Keely did all that talk about in season 1, I think when they broke up, that, you know, the things he could be doing to be a better person. And Jamie has done all of those things. Like, I wouldn't be upset if they brought those two together. But I don't know. The way this was kind of shot, like, I wouldn't be I don't think they'll do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do have some sort of like heart-to-heart conversation the next episode, or maybe even at the very end that they both part ways and then gives them some sort of like path to the other romantic relationship.
Okay. I just want to boil this down a little bit, which is your assumption is that because he comes out without a shirt on and puts on a robe, that the two of them made love. And one would only do that within the confines of marriage. So my assumption is that Roy and Keeley are remarried and Miss Bowen is no longer an option. The other thing I am open to is that Roy, everyone knows tie-dye is warm because of the way the sun hits the different colors. And so that he used her showers, her facilities, and so not wanting to put on the sweaty tie-dye, he is coming out and wearing her robe, and that there is still an option for him to marry Miss Bowen and for Keeley to marry Jamie in some sort of joint wedding where Julia Roberts is both the best friend and the wedding planner with J-Lo, and Ben Affleck robs a bank. That's how I see this all turning out in Charleston, where a bank is robbed every 5 minutes, as the town told me.
Wow.
Which seems like a statistic that can't possibly be true. Anyways, Christopher Nolan. We're back at Richmond, and this was interesting. Let's talk about this. Will the Kit Man shows up. Locker room, kit room. I guess locker room is Scottish, right? Because of the Loch Ness Monster. So I don't know what they call it in England. But Nessie's room is all done up. All the jerseys are hung up. And there is a card that is Nate apologizing to him. Did you feel like this was necessary? Did you feel like that Will and Nate, there was some like long-standing feud, or was this just letting us know, hey, guess what, guys? Nate's good again. What was this?
Yeah, Nate's good, and apparently he still has a key to get into Richmond. Like, I get the idea that, I guess, the sewer guy, just like he let Rupert in earlier, is also letting Nate in, but getting into the facilities, using the laundry, doing all this stuff, it was kind of silly, but I like again, there's another callback here, right? So Nate was the one that was super mean and rude to Will when he kind of took over the job, and in his apology letter that he writes to Will here, there's like a little like lavender flower in there. And at one point last season, Nate yells at Will for putting like lavender fabric softener for cleaning up the jerseys, because he said it's going to like players are going to lose their edge or whatever. So again, I like that little callback. I thought that was cool, but they definitely need to do something about their security.
Yeah. What's this guy's pension plan that he's still working after 80 years of letting people into this stadium, if I'm doing my math correctly?
Listen, he's just a sewer guy. He maybe he's hanging out with Ninja Turtles. Nobody knows.
Oh, man. I bet he's with Shredder, Tom. Maybe he's with Shredder.
He's a Foot Clan? Could be.
Oh, man, we went past my Ninja Turtles knowledge real fast. You said Foot Clan, and I was like, oh, we're talking about a different show. All right, let's go back to the law offices of KJPR, which are back in business. And Barbara returns with her receipt and her snow globe. They have a lovely moment. I did like this. I hope they bring Dan back. And speaking of people bringing back, that's not how that sentence should have worked, but I'll stick with it. Danny Rojas, the nice Danny Rojas, returns and's happy again and is like, the memories with Van Damme. And Van Damme's super like twitchy and like afraid Danny's going to kick him in the face. This was great.
Big bandage on his nose, and just that smile from Danny Rojas is just so infectious, and I love the Jekyll Hyde thing he's got going. It was fun.
So fun.
And we get a quick cut here too to Sam, who's putting that 1994 World Cup picture of the Nigerian team in his locker. Did you know what that was and what that was a reference to?
Well, I know that he brought it out in another season, and he talked about his goal of being on the national team. That was as far as I went with the callback.
Yeah, it was a season 1. It was the Two Aces episode where they're all like donating something to the fire. So that was what Sam was doing. He was taking that framed picture of the Nigerian team and so like I've hung this up in my locker as motivation until I make the national team. So, I mean, it's a cool little callback, but I would argue then, hey man, you threw this into the fire. You can't just pull it out of the fire and reprint it here.
Sure. You're talking about the episode where the main point was that Richard made love to a model on a beach and he gave up that sand. Yes, I remember that episode distinctly because that was the episode about the sand and the model and Richard. Yes. Speaking of Richard, Roy shows up in more tie-dye. It's a little bit more subtle, but it is definitely tie-dye. It's almost like he stole the bus driver's shirt is how I took this.
Yeah,
and maybe Roy killed the bus driver. I don't know. Killed him with drugs. Who knows? Rebecca's in her office, and she's hanging a child's drawing on the wall. What was happening here?
Yeah, so this is, again, another callback. This was the David Hockney painting that she got from Rupert. And I don't know what or why he sent it, but it was specific from Rupert. And I think in the earlier seasons, she like took it down off the wall and put some other like butterfly picture or something on there, just almost in spite of Rupert because she did like the picture. So
this is the painting in the pilot where she goes to give it to Higgins and Higgins is like, no. And she's like, oh, well, it's worth £1 million. And then she sends it to being sold, right? Isn't that this painting?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact significance or what else it kind of came up, but I just knew it had that tie to Rupert. But the idea now that she's past that, like it's a beautiful painting, she can hang out the painting. It's just like going to the meeting. Like it doesn't matter how you got there or what it is, but she's officially kind of over Rupert. And like how she says here in a bit, like she doesn't want to win to spite Rupert. She wants to win for them, like now for the right reasons.
No, that's all well and good, Tom, and I know it's been 1 hour and 34 minutes, but you just called that painting beautiful. Did you look at that painting?
I mean, yeah, I like Ted makes the comment about like
very rightly so. Ted makes that comment.
Listen, art's subjective, man. It probably wouldn't be something I would hang in my house, but I don't know. To each their own.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, not to each their own. Every once in a while, people should be shown the glaring truth that is a drawing made by a 5-year-old, and it is not good. Speaking of not good, Rebecca and Ted sit down, and a little switcheroo here. She spits in his face when she takes a drink, and she does it intentional, and she's like, no, it kind of seems like a tradition. This was funny.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good way to kind of send out this episode, but clearly a callback when Ted spit in her face, right?
When this happened, you know what my thought was? I thought, is this the end of the show? Was this the last episode? Because I feel like spitting in the face is the end of a season, traditionally. But then I was like, no, we got 2 more episodes. So I was a little bit confused by this callback. Am I wrong? Was
no,
the
we could still get there.
No. Was the spitting in the face not a season finale thing?
I don't know. I know. I'm pretty sure that's how they ended season 2, but I don't remember season 1 what the reason for it was. I thought it was more he just didn't like it and spit it out. I don't remember it being a thing in season 1.
Sure. I guess I'm thinking about that one character that used to spit on mirrors. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Anyways, we've been here a long time talking about something that isn't important to us, but maybe isn't important to the grand scheme of the world. But it's been 1 hour and a half, Tom, so let's sign off and do something else with our lives. You can email us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We do appreciate your emails, especially when they are about Mrs. Bowen and how excited you are to see her. We are also excited to hear from random diplomats throughout the world. Tom, what are the other social media things that are used for good and not evil that we can recommend to people?
At least we do. We use it for good. Team Binge or Team Binge Podcast at Twitter and Instagram, respectively. Join the conversation. Have fun with us. We only got 2 more episodes left. We are at the finish line. I think both these last 2 episodes were written by Jason Sudeikis, so I'm very intrigued to see how they roll this up. They've definitely done a good amount of kind of buttoning of some of these storylines, so they still have a lot to go with Ted, and I mean, he is the namesake of this series, so excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I don't have any predictions at this point. This episode threw some things at me that I wasn't ready for. Now that I'm assuming Nate is unemployed, so he's going to come back to Richmond, but I'll be interested to see how they finish this all. Tom and I have a request for our audience. In the same way that Amway works, we would ask that each of you find 3 friends, tell them about this podcast, and then ask those friends to find 3 people and ask them to listen to the podcast, and then those 3 friends ask 3 people, and so on and so forth until a pyramid is made. Also, we would like you to give those people some form of cash money so that this pyramid is made of money.
It's what we like to call total podcasting.
That's correct. It is something that I'm going to say Welsh created years ago. I don't know. I didn't buy the Amway videos, so I'm not real sure. But we appreciate those of you that have rated and reviewed us well. It's always nice. And we will see you next week for season 3, episode 11. 2 left. Tom, I know this isn't the penultimum. Is this the triultimum? I don't know any of the Latin suffixes or prefixes. But Tom, do you know what the title of the next episode of Theodore Lasso is called?
Oh, I've got nothing. It's too late. Ted
That is
Lasso
quite a title.
finds
I've
a
got
friend.
nothing. It's too late. That's actually not a bad title for a penultimum. It's like the show being like, listen, we tried, but 3 seasons is a lot of TV. So sorry, guys. You get what you get. Don't get upset. Remember
You
season
get what
1?
you get. You don't throw a fit.
There you go. Remember season 1? It was great. All right. I've been Julian.
And I've been Coach Tom. Till next time, everybody.